Ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoy my video, please click the like button and share the video. It is the only way the YouTube algorithms really notices me. I will be very grateful to you. Blood Moon Rising, Terror in the Heartland. Scary story, published by Scare Fiction. Read for you by Scare Fiction. Chapter 1, The Ominous Arrival. The road to Harper's Ridge wound through vast, empty fields and dense patches of forest, giving Alex Carter plenty of time to second-guess his decision to come here. The town, barely a blip on any map, had recently become the center of a chilling mystery, one that Alex, an investigative journalist, couldn't resist. The blood moon was approaching, and with it, a surge of unease that had the locals on edge. Alex's old Jeep bumped along the uneven road as he entered the outskirts of Harper's Ridge. The town looked frozen in time, with its dilapidated buildings and faded storefronts. He parked in front of a lone diner, a flickering neon sign proclaiming Edna's Place. Stepping out, he felt a shiver despite the warm evening air. Townsfolk moved like shadows, eyes darting with suspicion and fear. Inside the diner, the smell of stale coffee and frying bacon greeted him. Behind the counter, Edna, a stout woman with a perpetually furrowed brow, eyed him warily. He took a seat at the counter and ordered a coffee. As Edna poured, Alex noticed a bulletin board cluttered with missing person flyers, each face a haunting reminder of why he was here. Sarah, the town's unofficial historian, had agreed to meet him. She arrived shortly after, her eyes scanning the diner nervously before settling on Alex. She was younger than he expected, with an air of determination that seemed out of place in such a forlorn town. "Alex Carter?" she asked, extending a hand. "Sarah Whitmore. Thanks for coming." They spoke in hushed tones, their conversation punctuated by the occasional glance from Edna and the few patrons scattered about. Sarah explained that the disappearances had begun a few months ago, coinciding with the sighting of the blood moon. Locals whispered about a curse, a shadow that hung over the town since its founding. "Sheriff Bill won't like you digging around," Sarah warned. "He thinks it's all nonsense, but there's something dark in this town. Something real." As if on cue, the diner's door swung open and Sheriff Bill strode in. Tall and imposing, he radiated an air of skepticism. He fixed Alex with a steely gaze, his presence sucking the remaining warmth from the room. "Carter," he greeted, his voice a low rumble. "I hear you're here to stir up trouble. I suggest you turn around and head back the way you came." Alex met his gaze, unflinching. "I'm just here to find the truth, Sheriff." Bill's lips curled into a humorless smile. "Truth is, some things are better left buried." As the blood moon rose in the sky, casting an eerie red glow over Harper's Ridge, Alex felt the weight of the town's secrets pressing down on him. He had a feeling this story would be darker and more dangerous than he'd ever imagined. Chapter 2, Whispers of the Past. Alex's determination only grew stronger after his encounter with Sheriff Bill. The air was thick with tension as he and Sarah left the diner. The blood moon loomed ominously in the sky, its red glow casting long shadows over the town. "We need to start at the library," Sarah said, leading the way. "There are records there that might help us understand what we're dealing with." The town library was a small, dusty building that seemed forgotten by time. Inside, the musty scent of old paper and wood filled the air. Sarah led Alex to the basement, where they found shelves lined with yellowed newspapers and crumbling books. They spent hours combing through the archives, piecing together the fragmented history of Harper's Ridge. "This is it," Sarah whispered, pulling out a stack of old newspapers. The headlines screamed of past horrors. Strange disappearances plague town. Blood moon brings fear. They discovered articles about the town's founding families, stories of unexplained deaths, and mentions of a curse that seemed to resurface with each blood moon. Sarah's hands trembled as she read aloud. The elders believed the blood moon heralded the arrival of a dark force. They performed rituals to protect the town, but something went wrong. The more they read, the more Alex understood Sarah's fear. This wasn't just a story for her, it was a personal crusade. Her great-grandmother had been among the first to disappear, and the town's secrets had haunted her family for generations. Their search led them to Sarah's home, a place filled with old records and family heirlooms. In her dimly lit living room, surrounded by dusty tomes and faded photographs, Sarah revealed a journal she had kept hidden. "This belonged to my great-grandmother," she said, handing it to Alex. The journal was fragile, its pages filled with handwritten notes and sketches. As they read, they uncovered the story of a hidden artifact, a relic said to hold the key to the curse. The journal hinted that the artifact was buried in the woods, near an ancient burial site. Suddenly, the front door creaked open. Sheriff Bill stood in the doorway, his face shadowed and grim. "I warned you to stop digging," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "You have no idea what you're dealing with. Why are you so determined to keep this hidden?" Alex demanded. "What are you afraid of?" Bill's eyes flickered with something between fear and anger. "Some things are better left in the past. You dig too deep, and you might not like what you find." As he left, Sarah and Alex exchanged a glance. The sheriff's warning only fueled their resolve. They knew they had to find the artifact and uncover the truth. The next morning, under the waning blood moon, they set out into the woods. The air was thick with anticipation and dread as they approached the ancient burial site. Alex felt the weight of history pressing down on him, knowing that what they discovered here could change everything. And as they dug through the earth, the sense of unease only grew stronger. They were about to unearth secrets that had been buried for centuries, secrets that might never let them leave Harper's Ridge. Chapter 3. The Blood Moon Rises. The shovel struck something hard, and Alex's heart pounded as he and Sarah cleared the dirt away, revealing an ancient, intricately carved stone box. As they lifted it from the ground, a chilling wind swept through the trees, whispering like voices from the past. Back in town, the blood moon hung low in the sky, casting an unnatural crimson glow over everything. Harper's Ridge looked otherworldly under its light, the familiar becoming eerie and menacing. Shadows stretched and warped, and the air seemed charged with a malevolent energy. That night, the town began to unravel. Alex and Sarah, exhausted from their discovery, tried to sleep but were haunted by unsettling dreams. Outside, the sounds of the night grew more sinister. Eerie howls echoed through the streets, and a sense of impending doom settled over Harper's Ridge. The first sign of something terribly wrong was the livestock. By morning, farmers found their animals dead, their bodies twisted and lifeless, with no apparent cause. Panic spread quickly. Rumors flew, each more wild and terrifying than the last. Some whispered about the curse, others spoke of vengeful spirits awoken by the blood moon. Alex's skepticism was eroding fast. He had come to Harper's Ridge seeking a story, but what he found was something far more terrifying and real than he had ever imagined. As he walked through the town, he saw the fear etched on the faces of the residents, heard their hushed, frantic conversations. In the town square, a meeting had been called. The air was thick with paranoia and fear. People shouted accusations, and fingers were pointed. Sheriff Bill struggled to maintain order, his stern demeanor cracking under the pressure. "This is your fault, Carter," one man yelled, his face red with anger. You brought this on us. Alex stood his ground, though fear gnawed at him. I'm trying to help, he said. We found something. An artifact that might explain all of this. Explain, another voice shrieked. We don't need explanations. We need solutions. As the argument escalated, a sudden bone-chilling scream pierced the night. The crowd fell silent, turning towards the source. A young woman, her eyes wide with terror, stumbled into the square. It's in the woods, she gasped. Something's out there. The tension broke, and chaos erupted. People scattered, some rushing to their homes to barricade themselves, others forming small, terrified groups. Alex felt a deepening dread. This was no longer just a story, it was a waking nightmare. That night, Alex couldn't sleep. He paced the small room at the inn, watching the blood moon through the window. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of the wind outside set his nerves on edge. The town was gripped by a primal fear, and he was caught in its web. As the blood moon reached its zenith, casting a blood-red light over the town, Alex knew they were running out of time. Whatever was happening in Harper's Ridge, it was far from over. And the worst, it seemed, was yet to come. Chapter 4. Unveiling the Artifact. The blood moon's light filtered through the dense canopy as Alex and Sarah ventured into the woods. The forest was a maze of twisted trees and creeping shadows, each step muffled by the thick carpet of leaves. Every rustle and distant snap of a twig set their nerves on edge. Alex clutched the journal in one hand, its pages marked with cryptic notes and sketches that guided their way. This is where the journal says it should be, Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible above the night's ominous symphony. They paused, scanning their surroundings, the sense of being watched pressing down on them like a physical weight. Alex's flashlight flickered, casting long, wavering beams that did little to dispel the darkness. We have to keep moving, he urged, his voice strained. We're close. The deeper they ventured, the more the forest seemed to come alive with eerie phenomena. Ghostly apparitions flickered at the edges of their vision, vanishing before they could be fully seen. Unsettling whispers drifted on the breeze, words just beyond comprehension, hinting at secrets and warnings from the past. Suddenly, Sarah froze, her eyes wide with terror. "Did you hear that?" she asked, her voice trembling. Alex nodded, his heart pounding. A low, guttural growl echoed through the trees, followed by a series of strange, otherworldly whispers. They pressed on, driven by a mixture of fear and determination. At last, they arrived at a small clearing. In the center stood a stone altar, half buried in moss and vines. The air around it seemed to hum with a dark energy. Alex stepped forward, the journal's instructions clear in his mind. "This is it," he said, his voice barely more than a whisper. "The artifact should be here." Together, they cleared the overgrowth, revealing a hidden compartment beneath the altar. With trembling hands, Alex lifted the stone lid, revealing an intricately carved box. The box pulsed with an unnatural warmth, as if it had a heartbeat of its own. Sarah's breath hitched as she looked at the artifact. "We found it," she said, awe and dread mingling in her voice. "This is what's been causing all of this." As they carefully lifted the box, a sudden, bone-chilling cold swept through the clearing. The forest around them erupted in a cacophony of whispers and ghostly apparitions, the air thick with malevolence. Alex felt a presence, ancient and angry, pressing in on them. "We need to go," he said urgently. "Now." They turned to leave, but the forest seemed to close in on them, the path they had taken now twisted and unfamiliar. Panic surged as they realized they were trapped, the artifact's dark power binding them to the cursed land. Fighting the rising fear, they pressed forward, guided by the faintest glimmer of moonlight through the trees. Forrest's whispers grew louder, more insistent, as if trying to pull them back. But Alex and Sarah pushed on, driven by the knowledge that the artifact held the key to Harper's Ridge's salvation. As they broke through the tree line, the blood moon's glow bathed them in an eerie light. Behind them, the forest seemed to seethe with anger, but they had the artifact. The truth was within their grasp, and with it, a chance to end the curse once and for all. They hurried back to town, the weight of their discovery pressing down on them. Harper's Ridge wasn't safe yet, but they had taken the first step. And with the blood moon high in the sky, they knew time was running out. Chapter 5. The Curse Unleashed. As Alex and Sarah hurried back into Harper's Ridge, they were met with scenes of utter pandemonium. Curse had fully taken hold, transforming the town into a nightmarish landscape. The blood moon cast an eerie, pulsating glow, amplifying the horror that now gripped the town. Townsfolk staggered through the streets, their eyes glazed and movements jerky, possessed by a dark force. Monstrous creatures, twisted amalgamations of human and beast, emerged from the shadows, their grotesque forms illuminated by the crimson light. The air was thick with the sounds of screams and guttural growls. "Alex, over here!" Sarah shouted, pulling him towards an alleyway as a monstrous figure lunged at them. They barely avoided its gnarled claws, the creature's eyes burning with an otherworldly fire. "We need to get to the church," Alex panted, clutching the artifact tightly. The journal mentioned something about sanctified ground. The streets were a battlefield. Possessed townsfolk clashed with the few remaining sane residents who fought back with makeshift weapons. Sheriff Bill, his face contorted with rage, stood in the center of it all, barking orders and firing his gun into the fray. Bill's eyes locked onto Alex. "This is your doing, Carter," he roared, storming towards them. "You brought this curse upon us." Alex held up the artifact. "We found this. It's the source of the curse. We need to destroy it." Bill's eyes widened with a mix of fear and anger. "You expect me to believe that? You've done nothing but stir up trouble since you arrived." A possessed townsman lunged at Bill, but Alex tackled the creature, narrowly avoiding its snapping jaws. Sarah swung a piece of broken wood, striking the creature and sending it sprawling. "Bill, listen to me," Alex pleaded, breathless. "We're trying to stop this. We need your help." For a moment, Bill hesitated, the chaotic scene around them reflecting the turmoil within him. Finally, he nodded, grudgingly. "All right, but if this doesn't work, you'll answer for it." They fought their way through the possessed and the monsters, reaching the old church that stood at the edge of town. The building's stained glass windows glowed with the blood moon's light, casting distorted shadows across the pews. Inside, the air was thick with dread. They placed the artifact on the altar, its dark energy pulsating. The journal had mentioned a ritual, but the instructions were vague, filled with cryptic symbols and ancient language. "We have to do this together," Sarah said, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. As they began the ritual, the church trembled. The possessed townsfolk clawed at the doors and windows, their faces twisted with malevolence. The creatures outside howled in fury, the air vibrating with their rage. Alex and Sarah chanted the words from the journal, their voices growing louder as the artifact began to glow with an intense, blinding light. The ground shook, and the walls of the church seemed to close in. With a final, desperate shout, they completed the ritual. The artifact shattered, releasing a wave of energy that swept through the town. Possessed collapsed, the creatures disintegrated, and a deafening silence followed. Breathless and shaken, Alex and Sarah looked at each other, the weight of their ordeal settling in. The curse had been unleashed, but they had fought it back. Harper's Ridge was scarred, but there was hope for healing. And as the first rays of dawn broke through, they knew their battle was far from over. Chapter 6. The Heart of Darkness. The dawn brought a fleeting sense of calm, but Harper's Ridge remained shrouded in an uneasy silence. The shattered artifact had halted the immediate chaos, yet the air was still thick with a lingering malevolence. Alex and Sarah knew their work was far from done. The answers they needed lay hidden in the town's dark history, and the truth about the artifact's origins was their only hope of breaking the curse for good. As they walked through the town's central square, the desolation was palpable. Broken windows, overturned carts, and the lingering stench of fear painted a grim picture. Survivors moved like ghosts, their eyes hollow and wary. Alex and Sarah's destination was a hidden underground chamber that the journal had hinted at, a place tied to the town's founding and, presumably, the artifact's dark power. Sarah's home became their refuge, a brief respite before the plunge into the unknown. They gathered supplies and reviewed the journal's cryptic clues. Sheriff Bill, now reluctantly allied with them, provided additional information from the town's archives. "This chamber," Bill said, pointing to an old map, "is beneath the town square. It was built by the founders, supposedly to protect something valuable. Or to hide something dangerous," Alex muttered, his eyes meeting Sarah's. They ventured into the basement of the town hall, where a concealed trapdoor led to a winding staircase. The air grew colder as they descended, the walls damp and claustrophobic. The flickering torchlight cast eerie shadows, heightening their sense of unease. At the bottom, they found the chamber, a stone room filled with ancient symbols and relics. In the center stood a pedestal, empty but for the faint outline of where the artifact had once rested. Chamber's walls were lined with inscriptions that told a story of power, sacrifice, and a pact made long ago. "We're missing something," Sarah said, frustration in her voice. "There's more to this." As they deciphered the inscriptions, a revelation struck them. The artifact was not merely a cursed object. It was a key to an even darker force, bound to the town's founders. Their ancestors had traded their souls for prosperity, leaving the future generations to bear the curse. Tensions rose as the reality of their situation sank in. The air grew thick with distrust. Bill's impatience and Sarah's mounting anxiety began to fray their fragile alliance. Suddenly, the chamber door slammed shut. They spun around to see one of the survivors, a man named Paul, whom Alex had interviewed earlier. His eyes gleamed with a dangerous fervor. "You don't understand," Paul hissed. "The artifact's destruction was only the beginning. I've been waiting for this moment. The power must be reclaimed." Paul's hidden agenda sent shockwaves through the group. He lunged at the pedestal, chanting an incantation that echoed off the stone walls. The chamber shook violently, and dark energy surged from the ground, swirling around him. Alex and Sarah fought to stop him, but Paul's strength was fueled by the artifact's lingering power. The struggle was fierce, the air crackling with supernatural force. Just as Paul seemed to gain the upper hand, Sarah grabbed a relic from the wall, a dagger inscribed with protective runes, and plunged it into the pedestal. A blinding light filled the chamber, and Paul screamed as the dark energy consumed him, collapsing into a lifeless heap. The chamber fell silent, the oppressive darkness lifting. Breathless and shaken, Alex and Sarah realized the fight was far from over. They had unveiled the heart of the curse, but its roots ran deep. Trust was fractured, and the town's survival hinged on their next move. As they emerged into the daylight, They knew they faced a battle against forces more ancient and malevolent than they had ever imagined. Chapter 7. Confrontation. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Harper's Ridge was once again bathed in the blood moon's eerie light. The final confrontation loomed, and Alex, Sarah, Sheriff Bill, and a handful of determined allies made their way to the ancient burial site. The air was thick with anticipation and dread, the stakes higher than ever. The burial site, once shrouded in mystery and darkness, was now an arena of impending conflict. The ground was marked with ancient runes that pulsed with a malevolent energy, and the artifact's residual power seemed to hum beneath their feet. The blood moon overhead cast everything in a surreal, crimson glow, amplifying the tension. Alex held the shattered pieces of the artifact, their jagged edges glowing faintly. "This ends tonight," he said, determination hardening his voice. "We destroy the artifact and end the curse for good." They didn't have to wait long. Possessed townsfolk emerged from the forest, their eyes burning with unnatural light, their movements puppet-like and erratic. Supernatural entities, twisted and grotesque, lurked at the edges of the clearing, their presence a chilling reminder of the curse's power. "Stand your ground," Bill shouted, his voice a beacon of authority amidst the chaos. He fired his gun, the shots echoing through the night, but the creatures seemed unfazed, advancing relentlessly. The battle was fierce and chaotic. Alex and Sarah fought side by side, their bond strengthening with every blow they landed, every step they took. Sarah wielded the dagger with the protective runes, its power cutting through the darkness. Alex used the journal's incantations, the ancient words a shield against the malevolent forces. One by one, their allies fell, each sacrificing themselves to buy precious moments for the others. Bill was relentless, his skepticism replaced by a fierce resolve. He protected them with every ounce of his strength, but even he was not immune to the curse's reach. As the battle reached its zenith, the ground beneath the burial site began to tremble. The artifact's shattered pieces glowed brighter, resonating with the blood moon's light. The cursed energy converged, creating a vortex of dark power that threatened to consume them all. "We have to destroy it now," Sarah shouted, her voice barely audible over the roar of the vortex. She and Alex positioned the pieces of the artifact on the ancient altar, the air crackling with energy. Alex recited the final incantation, his voice steady despite the chaos. The artifact's pieces vibrated, the runes on the dagger glowing in response. With a final, desperate cry, Sarah plunged the dagger into the heart of the artifact. A blinding light erupted from the altar, enveloping everything in its path. The possessed townsfolk collapsed, freed from the curse's grip. The supernatural entities disintegrated, their forms dissolving into the night. The blood moon's glow faded, replaced by the soft silver light of the true moon. As the light receded, the clearing fell silent. Alex and Sarah, breathless and battered, looked at each other with a mixture of relief and exhaustion. The artifact was no more, its curse lifted from Harper's Ridge. Bill approached them, his face etched with both sorrow and gratitude. "You did it," he said, his voice hoarse. "You really did it." But the victory was bittersweet. Town was scarred, its people forever changed by the ordeal. Alex and Sarah knew their journey wasn't over. The truth of the artifact and the curse's origins had been revealed, but the wounds would take time to heal. As they stood amidst the ruins of the burial site, the first rays of dawn breaking through the trees, Alex and Sarah made a silent vow. They would rebuild, they would remember, and they would ensure that Harper's Ridge would never again fall victim to the darkness. Chapter 8. Resolution. The dawn brought a fragile peace to Harper's Ridge. The blood moon had vanished, replaced by the soft hues of a new day. The town, once shrouded in fear and darkness, began to stir with the tentative steps of those who had survived the night. Curse was broken, but its echoes lingered in every corner of the town. Alex and Sarah walked through the central square, now eerily quiet. The destruction from the previous night was evident: broken windows, overturned carts, and scorch marks from the supernatural battle. Yet there was also a sense of renewal, a collective sigh of relief that the nightmare had ended. Townsfolk emerged from their homes, their faces a mix of exhaustion and hope. They exchanged wary glances, but also shared small, encouraging nods. The town had been forever changed by the ordeal, but its spirit remained unbroken. At the town hall, a makeshift memorial had been set up for those who had lost their lives. Flowers, candles, and personal mementos filled the steps, a poignant reminder of the sacrifices made. Sheriff Bill stood solemnly by, his hat in hand, paying his respects. "Morning," Bill greeted Alex and Sarah, his voice subdued. "We did it." "We did," Alex replied, his gaze sweeping over the memorial. "But at a great cost." Bill nodded, his eyes reflecting the weight of their shared experience. "We'll rebuild. Harper's Ridge has seen hard times before, and we've always come through. This time won't be any different." Sarah squeezed Alex's hand, drawing his attention. "What about you, Alex? Will you stay?" Alex looked around, the town's familiar yet changed landscape tugging at him. He had come to Harper's Ridge as an outsider, seeking a story, but he had found something much deeper, a community worth fighting for, and a connection that had surprised him. "I don't know," he admitted, his voice thoughtful. "Part of me feels like I belong here now. But another part of me wants to continue uncovering stories, helping others like we helped this town." Sarah smiled, understanding in her eyes. "Whatever you decide, know that you'll always have a place here. We couldn't have done this without you." The sun climbed higher, bathing the town in a warm, golden light. It was a symbol of new beginnings, even if the shadows of the past still lingered at the edges. Alex and Sarah walked to her home, where they had found refuge and planned their resistance. It felt like a lifetime ago, yet the bond they had forged was stronger than ever. As they sat on the porch, watching the town slowly come back to life, Alex made his decision. "I think I'll stay for a while," he said, a sense of peace settling over him. "There's still so much to learn about this place, and I want to help it heal." Sarah nodded, her smile widening. "I'm glad to hear that. Harper's Ridge needs people like you." Town continued its recovery, each day bringing new signs of hope and resilience. The scars of the curse would remain, but they would be a reminder of the strength that had brought them through the darkness. Alex and Sarah, along with the rest of the townsfolk, faced the future with a renewed sense of purpose. And as the sun set on Harper's Ridge, casting long shadows over the land, the first stars appeared in the clear night sky. The nightmare was over, but the journey towards healing and renewal had just begun.